All right, I just wanted to tell everyone, thank you for joining, but I have posted a link to my slides and also a link to my YouTube channel where I will be posting a detailed version of this talk. Also the slide change, I have changed the title of the talk a little bit to match the contents of it. So sorry about that. I submitted the title several months back, and since then a few things changed. In any case, so the title of the talk is Fast Real-Time Apps with Svelte, Firebase, and Decoupled CMS. And of course, Decoupled CMS in this case means Drupal, and I am using Drupal. So good day, everyone. We have very little time and a lot of material to cover, so let's get started. So CMSs, or content management systems, do a great job of managing your website content. They also do a pretty good job at serving that content. But in some cases, the server-side rendering of content is slow, especially if there is a lot of application functionality implemented within the CMS, such as shopping carts, discussion forums, and other interactive features. And if that CMS is written in PHP, which is not known for its blazing speed, then that could also be a problem. But this problem becomes even worse when your users are logged in. And almost all the user interactive features, they do have to log in to use those interactive features. So if the users are logged in, so then that means the pages cannot be cached. So all the slowness of your backend, is directly visible to the end user. So that's why there is a trend towards decoupling the CMS from serving the content. Hence, decoupled or headless CMS. But I feel that we are throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We are losing too much of the benefits of the CMS while decoupling. Okay, this talk will show a hybrid approach, which gives you all the benefits of CMS without the slowness, right? Gives you the speed and gives you the features of the CMS also. And all the benefits of decoupling without blowing your development budget. What I mean by blowing your development budget means if you have to implement too many things in your JavaScript or whatever the front-end framework you're using, then you might, you're basically rewriting the entire CMS on the front end. So let's get started. Our solution will consist of Drupal CMS to manage and to serve the content. GraphQL, just FYI, not REST API or JSON API is what I'm going to use. So I'm going to use GraphQL to query content from JavaScript, and the content is coming from Drupal. And Svelte.js, my favorite JavaScript framework or compiler, to implement the JavaScript UI. Firebase Auth to authenticate external users, and I'll explain what external users are. Firebase Firestore to store external user data. That is the database, the real-time database that Firebase offers. And then Firebase Storage to store external user uploaded files, like pictures if they upload, or a resume or something like that. All right, so that's why we have the tagline, decouple different. Now, I must say that this is just another take on progressive decoupling. So you'll hear that that's the official way of calling this approach, progressive decoupling. So let's get started. All right, so what's wrong with full decoupling? Now, first of all, what is full decoupling? Full decoupling is when you write a JavaScript app and you completely hide Drupal or your CMS, from your users, and the JavaScript app is doing all the work, and it's requesting data from the CMS. So what's wrong with that kind of full decoupling? The problem is the CMS becomes nothing more than content storage and perhaps editing system. Okay, let me just make sure that I am paying attention to. Okay, yeah. So the problem is that this CMS becomes nothing more than the content storage and perhaps content editing system, right? That's all there is to it. What about all the other things that the CMS is already capable of doing? It already does. And especially if you're using Drupal, then you know all the wonderful things it does. The most important of them is rendering the page. Not only does it wrap the content in the theme template, it also renders the media, images, all those things that it does, rendering of the page. Another thing is CMS does a great job of SEO and all the page metadata that goes with it. So search engine optimization, if you do everything in your React or whatever JavaScript app, then how does the crawler, the search engine, read the page? So that's a problem. And then CMS does internationalization. Drupal has great internationalization support, and you're kind of throwing that away. And Drupal has a huge ecosystem of modules. You are throwing that entire ecosystem away. So if you throw all of that away, you are left. Sorry, you're left holding the bag. You have to implement everything in your JavaScript front-end app, along with creating back-end services for features that are not exposed as services, which is almost everything. I mean, if you were using extension modules that were adding new features to your Drupal website, now you're doing full decoupling. You have to implement those features in your front end. Okay. All right. So now, what do we want from decoupling, right? Why are we decoupling? So page rendering is slow. Drupal is written in PHP, so page rendering is kind of slow. PHP is not the fastest of languages, and especially in the absence of caching. Now you can mitigate that with caching, but of course it's not that great. And the caching is out of question if your users are authenticated and pages are rendered slightly different for each user based on their personalization. To me, it will say hello, Jitesh, and to Gaurav, it will say hello, Gaurav. So that could be. So therefore, you cannot cache the page. Another reason is you want to implement client-side interactive in JavaScript. Sure, you can do that without decoupling. You can just inject JavaScript in any site. But where's the fun in that? So, another reason for decoupling is your content is available on other clients, such as mobile apps and native hybrid apps, etc. And finally, CMSs like Drupal are built for managing and serving content. So sometimes they just get in the way of implementing other features and customization. I'm sure you all have done some situations where been in a situation where you wanted to modify something on the page and you couldn't because you didn't know where exactly in the rendering layers you have to do. So sometimes it is easier to implement such features outside the CMS. Okay. All right. And that, by the way, outside the CMS also means that ease of development means also cheaper development. You're saving money, and your development budget is there. So before we get into how to decouple, let's talk about types of users. Okay, so because that's important, especially to this talk. So you have some users that are just visitors. Okay, so here they're anonymous users. All they do is view content. They are completely anonymous, so you don't know who they are. And you may have a little bit of information, demographic information through Google Analytics, but that's all you know about them. Then there are editors and admins. So these are editors and admins. They both log into your backend, your Drupal backend or your CMS backend. And editors, they edit stuff, and administrators, they administer the whole site. Okay. So, and then finally, these users. Users, this is what I mean by users. They don't use any of the backend features, which means they don't actually edit stuff. They don't administer your site, but they do create their own user content. Okay, such as what could be the user content? Basically, content created by users of your site, not editors or admins, such as e-commerce orders, comments, service requests, calendar appointments, ticket purchases, job applications, everything, all these things the end users might create, right? So our approach is focused on these users. So now the question is, Are they authenticated? They need to be authenticated, of course, because you cannot allow anybody to post comments or create a service request on your site. But the key thing is where to authenticate them. And the answer is no, not in Drupal or the CMS, somewhere else. And where to store their user content, user-generated content. Again, not in Drupal. That's what we are going to do. So now we are ready to talk about how to decouple. Okay. The front-end server of your website, keep it stateless. So Drupal, as far as your users, quote-unquote users, these are not editors and admins, but they're authenticated not to Drupal, but something else. These users should see Drupal as stateless, completely stateless, and Drupal should see them as stateless. Okay, so they do not log into Drupal. So why stateless? So that the server serves the same bytes to all visitors and users, and therefore pages get cacheable at every level, and I mean at every level, at the server level, at the CDN level, and even at the browser level, right? So as they say, the fastest request is the one that was never made. So if the browser is not even reaching out to you for a page, then that's pretty fast, right? The users, instead of logging into the CMS, they log into the external identity management system such as Auth0, Okta, AWS Cognito, and in our case, we are going to use Firebase Auth. So Firebase is a serverless platform that has authentication or user authentication service built in. Okay. All right. So the editors and admin, they still log into the CMS backend to do content management and administration. So you will have to create a Drupal account for those people, but not for all your users. The user-generated content is basically served from and stored into the external system, Firebase in this case, outside the CMS. So Drupal does not store the comments or the job applications or any of e-commerce orders, all those things. So, and this thing, the managing of interacting with the user and managing of the user content, logging them in, etc., is done with JavaScript. So, and this JavaScript code, which itself is served with the CMS along with the site pages. So basically, your Drupal is serving pages. It also serves JavaScript, your JavaScript application, and I'll show you how. So you're not, JavaScript application is nothing but assets, right? So now I cannot say enough good things about, now the JavaScript framework that we will use is Svelte. I can't say enough good things about Svelte. So, it's my favorite JavaScript framework, but much more usable than React, Angular, Vue, all of them. You can go to svelte.dev and you can learn all about Svelte. I don't think I have my YouTube channel has dozens of Svelte videos, so you can go there too. So what about content? So after all, we are talking about a CMS website, so there will be a lot of content. But we are bound to run into some cases where JavaScript is the one who needs to fetch the content from CMS and show it to the user. So that's where GraphQL comes in. So we will talk about more GraphQL, and we will use persisted queries, which are more faster and secure. We'll get to that in a second. Okay. All right. And finally, if you're not tired of winning, then you can add a layer of CDN, which is caching in the cloud using Cloudflare or CloudFront or one of those CDNs. Okay. So we are almost ready for the demo. Now, this was all the background that I needed. We're almost ready for the demo, but before that, a little bit about me. My name is Jitesh Doshi. I live and work in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm a developer, entrepreneur, and an avid tinkerer. I play with technology. I love to do that. I've been doing Drupal professionally for 12 years, and I'm interested in web and mobile, CMSs, JavaScript, cloud, serverless, Firebase, containers, Linux, Go, Rust, Kotlin, etc., etc. But lately, I have fallen in love with Svelte. I have fallen hard in love with Svelte, and you'll see why. So you can go to my YouTube channel, subscribe there, please, and watch dozens of videos I've published on Svelte and Drupal. And I work for Spinspire. So Spinspire is a CMS and web-focused company based out in Florida. We have contributed some very popular modules to Drupal.org. PRLP is one of them. Popular tags is another, and there are a few. And here on your screen, you see some fine folks who work for our fine company and serve our fine customers like Nike, Florida Blue, federal government, and so on and so forth. So thank you for listening to this pitch. And now we get to the demo. So really, what could possibly go wrong? Let's do it. So let's go to this. This is my Drupal site. And I have two tabs open to the Drupal site. This is the front end. It's called decoupledifferent.office.spinspire.com. And then this is the same site, but it's a slightly different URL. It has
I don't see the demo video. I mean, there's not demo. It's still the screen.
No. There's no video.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm doing live demo.
I don't see the live demo on the screen. That's something.
Let me see.
Okay. Okay,
that's
probably for me. Sorry, my mistake.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Okay. All right. Good. So, all right. Thank you for Gaurav. Thank you for pointing such things out. Do interrupt me if I'm going off without paying attention, because I'm not looking at the chat. All right. So like I was saying, that Decoupled Different is my public facing version of my site, and then exactly the same Drupal site, but a different host name is edit.decoupledifferent.office.spinspire.com. So the idea is that you expose one to your admins and editors, this one. And as you can see, I am logged in here. I can see, although the login link I have hidden, but I am logged in as administrator. So I can actually edit stuff, okay? But this is what my end user will see. So let's talk about what we are looking at. I want to show you, start with caching. Let me show configuration, development performance. And here I have browser and proxy cache maximum age 15 minutes. Now you can set it to whatever you like based on the freshness of content that you're serving. I've set it to 15 minutes. You could set it for whole 1 day or 1 minute. It's up to you. I set it somewhere in between. And I'm going to save this configuration and clear all caches. This way we can look at okay, let me send. Okay, so now I am going to turn on inspect element here. And let's go to network. And I am going to clear empty cache and hard reload, because I want to show you how the whole thing works from the beginning. So in the beginning, when we clear cached and everything, in the beginning, the page was fetched actually, and we, as you can see, I don't know if you can see this. Let me expand this. Yes, if you can see this, it transferred 2.5 MB. I hope you can see that. So it made 117 requests and it transferred 2.8 MB. So quite a bit of transfer. Okay, now let me go to a different page. I'm going to click on this. By the way, what you're looking at is a sort of like a little conference site. Okay, and this is the schedule on August 21st, 9 to 10 a.m. There are these sessions. And then 10 to 11 a.m. there are these other sessions. So let's just click on read more of a session, this one, okay? So when I clicked on it, once again, it fetched the entire page, and it did transfer 958 kilobytes transfer, okay? And the thing about it is that the first page, it was transferred in full. But if you look at the expiration, the response headers, cache control, pay attention to this. 900, max age 900. It means 900 seconds, which, by the way, is same as 15 minutes. Because we set this to 15 minutes, that's why the cache control header here says 900 seconds, which means in the next 15 minutes, it should not re-request this page. We shall find out. Let us now go back to the home page. So here, if I click on home, and now pay attention to my browser's network tab, and at the bottom, it says 0 bytes transferred. Nothing at all was actually transferred. Although it looks like some requests were made, these were not made. As I was saying, the fastest request is the one that was never made. So it's all coming from disk cache, and that's the reason why 0 bytes were transferred. Okay. Now, if I once again go back to the same article or the session, sorry. So I will click on it again, and once again, it transfers 0 bytes only. So this is what I meant by full caching. Now, if I do the same exact thing here, if I do that here, then we will have a problem. So here, if I go to the site, and now it doesn't matter how many times if we go to this page, it will not cache the page. So it transferred 3.3 MB in this case. I go to the same article, and it transferred 91 kilobytes. Oh, sorry, 1.7 MB, 1.8. Say it's 1.8. I go back to home, and it still transfers a whole bunch of like half megabyte. So that's the point. I am logged in. Because I am logged in, it cannot use page caching. It has to render the page again, or it has to fetch the page again. But here, because I'm not logged in, we can use page caching. So that's the first thing. So now let's talk about this. Let's go back to the front page, home page. This schedule. So as you might notice that this is no front page has been created. This is the default Drupal front page. But in that front page, I have added two things. One is the sign-in button here for end users, and the other thing is the schedule. So these are two blocks. Now, how do you know that they are blocks? You can go back to my logged in version tab, and if I hover on these things, you see this thing shows up: configure block, sign in. So this is a block. Now this I implemented. Let me close this. This was implemented using. Let me make this a little bigger. This was implemented using a progressive decoupled block. Okay, and I'll show you how those are implemented in a second. But the other screen is the schedule. So this is also a block. Both of these are JavaScript applications. Other than an info YAML file, there is nothing that I had to code within Drupal itself. So this is my schedule block. It's showing the conference schedule from 9 to 10. So these sessions, and 10 to 11 these. So on the front end, this is the user-facing side. I have this schedule. Now I can actually, there are some features in here. I can click on a schedule, and it brings up a nice modal, of course. And in that modal, there is this collapsible, the collapsible. So all these animations you see, these are one-liners in Svelte. And this is a modal. Modal was written in Svelte itself. And this is a collapsible, also written in Svelte. So this is an example of us injecting a JavaScript application into into our Drupal site. So, if I just click close, then the modal goes away. So that was all JavaScript, and that was all Svelte. And then the Drupal functionality still works. If I click on read more, it'll take me to that. Now, this checkboxes, these check marks, sorry, not checkboxes, but check marks that you see, those are, they allow us, if I hover on it, it says, add to your schedule or mark favorites. So I can put these two in my schedule. So let me click this one. Oops, when I click on it, it says decouple different .office.com says, please sign in. So it's basically forcing me to sign in. I cannot use, obviously, if Drupal or the server or nobody knows my identity, then of course it doesn't know how to keep track of my favorites, right? So in order to let it keep track of my favorites, I have to click on sign in. So let me do just that. I click sign in, and it brings up this sign in with Google. This again is a Firebase Auth, and I choose this particular account, jitesh@spinspire.com. And once I do that, it closes that tab, and we are back to this. And here it says, hello, Jitesh Doshi. So this is what I mean by personalization. So now keep in mind that we are not implementing personalization in Drupal. We are implementing it completely in the client side in our Svelte app. Okay. Now I can mark any of these. So I check this check mark rather. Let me close this. And now let's say these two are my favorites, and then Lactus is not, and then VC and Capto, they are favorites. So if I favorited them, I can check this check mark again, and now only those that I have marked as favorites show up. If I uncheck it, then everything shows up. And I hope you notice the animations, right? So there are animations there. Let me just search. This is a search box. Again, this is another JavaScript feature that I added with JavaScript with Svelte. So I type any random word in here, and then only if that word shows up in the title of these sessions, then it shows up. So this is what you would do if you want to find a session in a large conference. Okay, so all of these things are implemented using Svelte and Firebase. So let me now show you the real-time features of this. Just FYI, I have this Firebase tab, and if I go to my to my database, so this is where I'm storing. This is my site. So there's a collection for that. These are all the users, and at this point there is only one user. And that one user, that's me, of course. These are the node IDs that I have marked as favorite. Okay. Now, let me show you some real-time features, and let me create one more window, and I will go to the same place, decouple different. So I'll just have two tabs in the same place. Let me put these two tabs on the same screen side by side. Okay, that's a little too small. Let me make it bigger. All right, so now I have the two tabs. This is the front-end view as seen by the end user, and this is also the same thing, but in a different tab. So if I unfavorite the first one, watch what happens on the right-hand side. So I uncheck, and it gets unchecked here. If I uncheck this one, it gets unchecked here. Well, of course, if you have seen a Firebase application, this is nothing new, but it gets a little bit better than that. I can even sign out here and watch what happens to this sign out here. So when I click sign out, they both got signed out. It's the same user, of course, so that's why they both got signed out. So this is what I mean by, and if I sign in again, let's sign in here instead of there. So if I sign in, and then I accept that, and that finishes the sign in. Then this got signed in, but this also got signed in. And then, of course, all my favorites, they showed up again in both the places. So that's what I mean by some real-time features. Okay, now I want to show you a little bit about the blocks. Let me close this one. We don't need this anymore. Now, I switched tabs to my logged in session, or the backend. And I want to show you that these blocks, how they are, oops, not application, how they are coded. So all I have to do, and for that, I will go into VS Code here, and the blocks are implemented using progressively decoupled blocks. And all you have to do is write an info YAML file. I cannot go into the details of it. I have one for login block info YAML and schedule block info YAML. So this is a PDB block. By the way, you can use PDB blocks or component. There is another module called component that does similar things. So you can use either. And the key thing I wanted to show you was that you can even configure these blocks. If I click on schedule configure block, as you can see, there is the query hash and a query ID, which I will explain what that is. Okay, so those are GraphQL query hashes and IDs, and we'll get to that. All right, So that was the demo. Let's talk about what are the details. How was all this implemented? Wow, I'm glad that things didn't go wrong too badly. Now, how much time do we have? We have until, I think, 2:35. So 2:30, I guess. Yeah, so we have very little time. So let me just go into what were the benefits. As you saw with this approach, we keep all the features of the CMS, and yet we don't lose caching. We don't lose, we can keep caching because our users are not locked in. We get real-time server push and synchronization, right? Because of Firebase. We are keeping all our information in an external system, which also makes things easier to manage. If you want to wipe out the user data, you can just go into Firebase and do it and not lose all of your Drupal content. Also, we get great user access control, which meaning to say, I will show you in a minute what I mean by that. Firebase has very good user access control. And then the persistent GraphQL queries are secure and cacheable. Sorry, I did not show you that. Let me show you that. So in the front end, this information is coming over GraphQL. Let me go to inspect, and I will prove it. So I go to my network tab. Yeah, here. So if I click around, if I go to an article or a session, then I come back to home, you see okay, this is too small. Let me expand this a little. Yes, so GraphQL, this is GraphQL request. Let's look at the response. This is the data. This is all the node and entity information that I'm getting from Drupal using the GraphQL module. But the best part is, look at my request. It is not a post, it is a get. If you have done any GraphQL programming, then you would know that GraphQL likes to send its request over a post request, which basically means post requests are, as you know, they are not cacheable. They are not idempotent like get. So and not only I'm sending it over get, I am also not sending any of the body of the GraphQL request. I'm only sending the query ID. So that is accomplished because, so that's what I mean, because I'm using persisted queries. Again, all of this source code will be available, so you'll be able to see how I'm doing those things. But these persisted GraphQL queries, they are more secure and cacheable. Why are they secure? Because you don't have to allow the users to make any arbitrary queries, GraphQL queries, and they're cacheable, of course, because they're GET requests. So, of course, you get all the benefits of client-side interactive JavaScript, which, of course, is implemented in Suite Svelte. And I would love to talk about Svelte a little more. Let's talk about Svelte. Okay, I am running out of time a little bit, but I wouldn't do any justice to my presentation if I don't show you some basics of Svelte. Sorry, not that one. Svelte.dev. Yeah, go to Svelte.dev, and then let's click on REPL. This is the in-browser REPL, and this is the simplest program you can write in Svelte. So why do I like Svelte? It's because of true reactivity. Let me prove it to you. So far you see a variable, JavaScript variable, and there is a template in which you have fixed string and a variable string. Big deal. And the variable value is world, so therefore you see world over here. No big deal. That's fine. But now let's look at reactivity. Now, if I create a button, because a variable was set some time back, will it update? So let's call this do it button, and to the button we add an event handler on click, and the handler is specified in curly braces. You give a lambda function, and then you do whatever you want to do. In my case, I'm going to say hello name equal to, let's say, New York. Hello New York is what I want to say. So now what I'm doing, I am setting, this is the button. When I click, the name variable will be set to New York. Will it update this? Will it? Let's find out. Click, and yes, it says hello New York. Now keep in mind that this was just assigning to a new variable. There is none of the set state or use state garbage that you have to do in React. So this is true reactivity. This is real reactivity. Okay, but not only it is reactive, it gets better. So let's add an input box, and in the input box we say bind : value equal to the expression name. What we are saying here is that the value of this input box is bound to this expression, this variable name, which means it's bound in both directions. So if I start typing into this input box, I'm modifying the value, which should update the variable. Let's see, and which should update this. And let's see if it does. If I click the page. Yes, of course. And with every keystroke. And if I click the button, it will update the variable. Will the variable update modify the input box? Let's find out. Yes, it does. So this is true two-way binding. And none of this involves us informing the framework that I am modifying this variable. You just modify the variable like this or like this. So this is true reactivity. And this is the reason why I love Svelte. You don't have to do any of the use state and set state and all that stuff. So now, don't even get me started about stores. So stores are what we did above. Over here is great for component local state. But how do you handle state that is shared between unrelated components? So that's where stores they are these come in, and the stores are state objects that are not only shareable between components. They are also observable. They are reactive. Whatever code you write, it will, whatever modifications you make to the store, it will be observed by all the components that are observing it, and all the templates will update themselves. So I don't have time to get into that. So anyway, so let's go back to our presentation. Svelte has a minimum learning curve. It gives you transitions and animations out of the box. You saw all the animations that I was showing earlier. Those were the one-liners, okay? And this learning curve is minimal. I learned Svelte in half a day. Initially, the first 80% of it. And then, of course, slowly you learn more and more over time, okay? All you have to know is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript basics. And then Svelte teaches you the magic. Okay. All right. So the other layer is Firebase, and it stores all your user-generated contents, comments, photos, etc. Firestore is their real-time database. It'll do server push, and it will tell all your clients that data has changed. It has excellent, by the way, user control, access control. And then Firebase Auth is the authentication system, which is what I was using here when I click on this sign in, sign out. That's Firebase Auth. Storage, I could not show you file uploads, but you can go to svelte.spinspire.com to see the demo of file uploads. Hosting functions and all that, we didn't use. Hosting is where you serve your assets from the Firebase CDN, and functions is when you have functions as a service function in cloud. You put your code logic in cloud. Again, I'm short of time. I don't have. So now, finally, the fantastic security rules. If you have time, you should go and look at the Firebase security rules. I'll just show you in my database. There is this rules. So in the rules, I declaratively say that allow access to a particular user's record with this UID only if the authentication UID matches that UID. So sorry, for the lack of time, I cannot get into the details of it, but it's there. All right, so GraphQL. Now, I mentioned GraphQL. We are using GraphQL, of course. GraphQL is great because it gives you type safety, flexibility, power, and it's better than REST, in my opinion. I wish I had time to show you the GraphQL Explorer, which is right here. GraphQL Explorer. This is part of Drupal now, and this is my query. I can. There's a lot. This is like an IDE. You can get completions. All the documentation is here, and you can execute the query, test it, and all that information is here. So unfortunately, we are out of time. We cannot do that. The key thing is, one of the problems with GraphQL is that you have to send the request as a post, but we are not sending it as a post. What we are doing is we go into configuration, web services, GraphQL, and query maps. I have imported my GraphQL queries as a query map. This is the hash, and if I inspect it, the actual body of the GraphQL is stored on the server. So all I have to do is send this query hash ID in my request, which I showed you earlier. So that's GraphQL. I think there were other talks here that explain the benefits of GraphQL. All right, and now of course there is CMS itself, Drupal, our favorite CMS. And so the key thing is we don't tell the end users don't log in. Editors and administrators do, and because of anonymous users, everything is cacheable. You can just put your Drupal site on Cloudflare or wherever. And then we use decoupled blocks or the component module to create islands of app in ocean of content. So we are putting, these. So this is a little island of application, JavaScript application. This is a big island of application, but it's sitting in the middle of ocean of content. All right, so that is that, and I did not get a chance to talk about PWAs. I don't think we have time for that. I do want to don't want to exceed my time. So let's move the conversation forward, and you should take action if you like. So if you would like to talk to me about this architecture and how it can be applied to your sites, hit me up at these contact handles, and I will record a very detailed presentation, a version of this presentation, and upload the screencast at youtube.com/Pinspire. The link was in the chat. I'll also post some source code there, so please go there and subscribe and turn on the alerts so you know when I post this video. And oh, by the way, I am looking for work. I'm always looking for work. In case you need an expert developer, front end, back end, full stack, everything, that's me. Thank you for your time.